The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. The Honourable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, we move that this House notes with sadness the passing on of African National Congress Member of Parliament, Mr. Goodwill Radebe, who succumbed to injuries sustained from gunshots during an attempted hijacking in Roodepoort, Gauteng on Tuesday evening, the 21st of June 2018. We also remember that the 40-year-old Radebe became an MP in 2009 and served on the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training, the Portfolio Committee on Energy, and the Portfolio Committee on Transport. We also recall that in his earlier political career, he served in various structures of the mass democratic movement in Mpumalanga. We also understand that he served as Deputy Secretary of the Congress of South African Students in Mpumalanga in 1994, and in 1998, he served as Chairperson of the South African Students' Congress at the Tshwane University of Technology, formerly known as Pretoria Technikon. We further understand that in 2002, he was part of the task team tasked with establishing branches of the Young Communist League in Mpumalanga and was elected as one of the first district secretaries in the Sibande district. We realized that in 2008, Radebe was elected as someone who worked hard to improve the lives of all South Africans. And lastly, House Chair, this House conveys its...
Sibande, when I realized that I will miss out on attending his funeral due to happen a few hours later. No loss of life can be greater or less amongst different people. The reality of Sibu's absence in our portfolio committee is real to us on a weekly basis, while I am convinced that it must be even more so where he used to be and sadly is no more. I remember his answer when I asked him why he decided to conversations with Sibu, and soon found myself smiling about what we could share with one another. And may I add, the content remains confidential and classified. Sibu had a great sense of humor and a young, curious spirit. His political views were grounded. Umsinga, we must talk about these things, when I shared some Afrikaner stories to him in return. More than once, we both committed to that special braai, sad for losing out on a valued friendship. In memory, I relate to him as a member of the Transport Portfolio Committee with respect, where he was a contender to be reckoned with. Let it be said, he served with pride and conviction, thoroughly and intense. Without doubt, he did make a difference. Lastly, when I imagine Sibu, I see him with a friendly face and advancing posture, keen to engage and to interact. To you, Sibu, his family, friends, and colleagues, you remain in our thoughts and prayers, and may your soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mulawutsi.
House Chair, the economic freedom fighters is saddened by the tragic passing of Honourable Ms Z Radebe, whose life was taken away so prematurely. He was a consummate politician whose commitment to his own organization and to the country was unquestionable. We may have disagreed on how to take the country forward, but there was no disagreement in the fact that all of us have the best interests of our country at heart. His death also reminds us of the daily struggle faced by millions of our people just to survive in a very violent society. The levels of violent criminality have reached alarming heights in this country. It is now by luck that people in the township survive. because governance of these areas has taken over Portfolio Committee of Transport. Although he was young, but he was vibrant, and he used to share so many things above party politics. He was a friend of everyone, regardless of the political politics he come from. So we are saying, the family and the friends of Honorable Radebe and to his political home, the ANC, may you be comforted in the knowledge that he may well valued by his colleagues in this house, and may his soul rest in perfect peace and rise in glory. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Schlengwa. Honourable Schlengwa.
Usbu had respect for everybody in this house. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, the model of a perfect colleague who understood that it is okay to disagree and find solutions, but that did not make any of us in this house our enemies. You know, of course, we'll all remember Usbu as, without fail, an issue big or small, he would, on a point of order, I'm able to break, that is the value which we have lost. And so I just want to say of the IFP to Usbu's family, to say we feel your loss, because we have lost a friend, we've lost a colleague, and we've lost a servant of the people of South. He was always alert, he paid attention to detail, and I think we must take time as a country to reflect seriously on the impact of crime on everybody, because quite frankly, if crime of those who have been affected by his passing will soon find peace during this challenging time, and that may the good Lord of mercy be their strength and comfort.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Ngwabe.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members, umndeni wakaHadebe nabo bonke abakhona. Nginibingelela ngencwadi kaMpostoli Paul mayethi ngoba thina siya umfowethu uSibu mina ke he was not only the colleague kodwa ube untanga wami. Wazalwa ngomhla ka4 March 1978, ngazalwa ngomhla ka31 March 1978. Uma sixoxa naye kuningi kakhulu obekufana phakathi kwethu. Ziningi izinto ebeyifana. I was a chairperson of SASCO at UDW, where we used to talk about with the comrade Usbu at that quarrel. But into ebuhlungu ukuthi sikhulume ngomuntu osemncane njengaye. La iAfrika ibhekene nenkinga ye-aging leadership. Ubuholi obukhona eAfrika sebukhulile. Sidinga by the US or any Western agents. We'll continue to fight for that. Sithi hamba kahle mfowethu. Farewell, my brother. One day we shall meet in a peaceful land, a peaceful country, where death shall have no dominion. Hamba kahle mafuza fulele njengefule lemvula. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is Honourable Kwankwa.
Thank you very much, House Chair. On behalf of the United Democratic Movement, I would like to take this opportunity to extend our deepest condolences first to the family, Umama Radebe, okwesibini friends zikaSibu, okulanga wedwa, nathi silahlekelwe. Often abantu babona sihleli opposite sides of the house, bacinge ukuthi asisebenzisani, we are not colleagues, and okwesibini we don't get to a point where we're able to put the interests of South Africa above those of our respective political parties. But in fact, xa sesiphumile apha singasaxhwithani naxa silapha, siyakwazi ukusebenzisana sonke sizama ukwakha uMzantsi Afrika ongcono for umuntu wonke. uSibu Siso, bendimbiza uba nguSibu Uja, bendithi nguComrade Sibu Uja, is one of the people bendiye ndithi call upon, especially when we needed to discuss izinto zabantu abatsha. 80% of the time I must admit, because uSibu wayestubborn njengam mhlawumbi, is that 80% of the time we didn't agree on most of the issues we discussed politically. That kind of leader, even during the Fees Must Fall campaign, when Comrade Sibusiso Mncwabe apha sine double trouble yoSibusiso. Comrade Sibusiso Mncwabe is quite correct in saying we concerned young parliamentarians West City sizama ukufumana indlela ukuthi thina siresponda njani to i-challenges ezifisa abanye abantu abatsha eMzantsi Afrika as a collective. Wayengomunye wabantu wayesenza i-inputs ezibambekayo. Futhi amava akhe kuba lokhu besevile nakwi-portfolio committee ye-higher education came in very handy for us in terms of guiding us, in terms of saying what are some of the critical issues, what are some of the topical issues, because you can't just only rely on one source when you're dealing with challenges in the country. Ndifuna ukuthi silahlekelwe. One of the things that people don't realize is that we've lost one of the most vibrant and charismatic leaders in this parliament. And kubuhlungu xa ufumanisa ukuthi ulwaphulo mthetho lithatha iinkokheli zangomso kukhokelo soMzantsi Afrika sangomso. Ugqatso ulufezile kodwa oyakhe indima kugqatso lethu ulufezile ngakuThixo. Menze Thixo aphumle ngonaphakade umkhanyisele ngokhanyiso olungacimiyo. Siyabulela.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Swart.
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of the ACDP, we're larger than life and the tremendous guy that he was here in Parliament, a wonderful leader, and his leadership in the broader South Africa. And we support those sentiments that have been expressed. And we were deeply shocked to hear of his tragic news of his murder in Gauteng and share the sentiments of other speakers that the high levels of crime impact every one of us, even parliamentarians not being spared, and just think of all the citizens on the ground struggling with the scourge of crime. And let's do more to fight crime in our nation. I remember Spoo here, Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC, you remember when he was sick the one day and you were running around in the house and I volunteered to take him to hospital. I never realized he was so young actually. And we had a very special bond. He used to call me Fundesi, Fundesi. And I would ask him how's his health because he had a heart murmur and we had a very special bond. So he, being a Fundisi, he wouldn't mind if I shared with you from the book of James 4, which I've shared before. How do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, then it is gone. And the book of James is right. Our lives are short and uncertain. I'm sure Spoo would not have realized that morning when he went what would have met him that day. And each one of us faces that. There are no guarantees. We face that every day. And if we ignore this lesson, we will not live our life properly. And we need to make our plans and live our life perspective to ensure we are in a right relationship with Jesus Christ. Life, we are heading up, either our Heavenly Father will comfort the Honourable Radebe's family upstairs and friends at this time of bereavement. May his soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Chaisa.
Very much, Honourable Chairperson. I used to refer to him as my son. I referred to as Umtimgul because we are the umbrella to each and every one of the nation. As AIC, convey our condolences to the family of the late G S Radebe, Sibusiso. Sibusiso was a young and energetic politician. He was doing his work of parliament with great determination. His untimely house to wake up when calling for the point of order. This corner, that was also referred to as the castle corner, then would make a lot of noise there in order to wake us up so that we don't fall asleep inside the House of Parliament. However, I could not miss the deadline as put by the Almighty. Death is our destiny. It is the fate that cannot be avoided. We are, however, very much grateful to his family for the time that they allowed him to be with us He shall be remembered for his great contribution in parliamentary work, his sense of urgency for service delivery, and his contribution to the nation. His death is a great loss indeed. It is now time that we celebrate the life that has been. So the family should feel comfortable, therefore, because your son has done great things for the nation and for God. It is therefore unfortunate that one has got to die in order to live. Death is the only way to life. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Next speaker is the Honourable Klawama.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable members, to Honorable Radebe's family, condolences. We thank you for allowing Mr. Radebe to share his life with us. No words are enough to bring him back. Ours is to learn from his humor, his South Africanness. He was the embodiment of African culture, Ubuntu, and humility. This is the man who called me to order more than anyone else. We have lost a great human being. He always told me that Arangase will not return come 2019. He persuaded me to join the ANC to recover my sanity. He didn't know, indirectly or unaware, he was motivating me to work harder. We always competed he always competed with me that his belly is bigger than mine. He always called my stomach a deprived Arang SA stomach. Honorable members, we have lost a true fighter.
I must thank the House and the ANC for the opportunity afforded to me to speak in a tribute to my neighbor, a comrade, and my family friend, Honorable Sibusiso Radebe. When we pay our tributes, it is so often that we speak only of the adult deeds of those to whom we pay our tributes. Hardly do we speak on their deeds at their formative or youth years. Today, I wish to speak of Comrade Sibu's upbringing and will say that his life as an adult and as a member of parliament was a result of progressive upbringing. This is certainly likely to afford us a clearer picture of the honorable member in context of children of South Africa that found themselves assuming adult roles from a much earlier age. Honorable members, Comrade Sibu was born of activist parents, the late Comrade Babe Radebe, who also was brutally murdered in his house, and of course the late Comrade Medi Radebe, who died out of natural causes in Mpumalanga province in the area called Ntlazaje, which is just in the middle of nowhere. The community of Ntlazaje had been forcefully removed from Kromkrans. The history of the struggles of the people of Ntlazaje against land and other property dispossession they had suffered at the Kromkrans was written in the conditions he saw of their lives. He came to know that these people that were his neighbors and friends had suffered an immense injustice through forced removals and forced relocations that scattered people, breaking down compensation. It was this reality that made Sibusiso to be outspoken about the expropriation of joint and led causes. I witnessed him grow and assuming leadership position in our area, where I also right there to assist in setting up and maintaining such projects. A case in point is Women Run Poultry Project. He helped his mother and other women to set up, which they did successfully. When at tertiary, he chaired the Pretoria Technikon, now known as TUT SASCO. During holidays, he came back to Ntlazaje to assist his late sister Pumzile, who also died from cervical cancer, who was then the ANC PCO administrator with community projects. At his Lukwatini PCO, member of parliament, he engaged in many community projects such as distributing wheelchairs and blankets to the elderly and dealing with abuse of farm workers, land claims, and so forth. Sibusiso did not just mushroom within the structures, but he grew up within the structures of the mass democratic movement and was a member of the ANC in good standing. It was his energy, activism, and being politically savvy that saw him being one of the comrades that established the Young Communist League in Mpumalanga and led it as the Khartsibanda Regional Secretary. At work, he knew that he had to join progressive unions such as Nehawu and SAMU. Comrade Isbu assumed this role of political activism when his life could have been about exploring the world of youth and spoiling himself on the air transport sector. Members of the House, particularly Honorable Stieneisen, as it has been said, will remember him for his point of orders. He will call a point of order from that corner, as it has been said, where his allocated seat was. But on another day, he will be calling for point of order from that corner. He sometimes surprised even members of the ANC, particularly the leadership of the ANC. But of course, more than all of us, I think he liked Honorable Stieneisen and displayed irritation. He did, of course, it not out of malice though, but he was young and he became the super glue that held the family together. He took care of young Pumzile's children and ensured that they obtained quality education. Some of them stayed with him here in Cape Town. More so, Sibusiso was God-fearing. He loved his church and was an active member of the church. Brought shock, disbelief, and heartache to many of us. We could not imagine such an energetic Sibusiso succumbing to death. 3 weeks before his death, at a tender age of their marriage. We are forced to be comforted, will be served.
A moment of silence in memory of the Honorable Sibusiso Radebe. The presiding officers associate themselves with the motion, and the condolences of the House is conveyed to the Radebe family, who have joined us in the gallery. You may be seated. The second motion on the order paper is in the name of the opposition.
Due to cancer on the 21st of Parliament, and acknowledges that she worked tirelessly in Parliament, working for both Rapport and Die Burger in senior positions before she joined the DA as a public representative. We recall the compassion, the kindness, and dedication which she tackled every task that came before her. We also remember her warm personality that will make her presence sorely missed, and we convey our heartfelt condolences to her 3 children, Candice Jongbloed, Ulrich Jongbloed, and Crystal September, as well as her DA family and colleagues. I so move.
I now call upon the Honorable Nuvo Drugen.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, family and friends, on behalf of the African National Congress, I'd like to take note that Parliament notes with sadness the passing away of Honorable Zelda Jongbloed, a Member of Parliament who represented the constituency of Oudtshoorn and Kannaland within the Democratic Alliance since 2014. Therefore, Parliament appreciates the dedication, patriotism, and energy that she carried herself in serving her constituency, Parliament, and her own political party, the Democratic Alliance, as she worked amongst us. The hard work she displayed in serving different and busy portfolios, as well as on the multi-party Women's Caucus, without complaining, knowing and understanding the cause to represent her community and her party. The fact that she used her journalistic prowess, professionalism, and her 40 years experience to probe on issues that affect society, her community, and her country. The fact that she carried out her political duties with candor and forthrightness, also knowing that she dealt with people who have feelings like herself, and to not harm personal relations she wanted to have with every member on a personal level. That is a rare character to find in a political environment. Her understanding of a variety of social issues and how she applied her mind to suggest solutions where necessary in order to contribute to making our country a better place for its citizens. Her concern about service delivery issues and good governance, comprehending that these are the pillars of a healthy society and the image of a country that looks after its citizens. The fact that she hid her physical pain and suffering and gave her life to serve during and hard times experienced by our nation. We now share the pain of her family's loss during her period of service to her country. Her name will always be held in high esteem by her constituency and by the National Assembly for availing herself to her country, to serve in her country. In light of all of this, Parliament and I personally learned from her that a politician does not have to be shrewd country. Dealing with common issues affecting all of us makes us desire to work together so that victory is shared by all of us who contributed towards finding a solution. We have a duty to make a difference in our people's lives, and that doing so can listening to our constituents' responsibility. Her concern about the consequences of service providers not being paid within the required time and public servants not operating within regulations was genuine. It came from the heart that was motherly and politically upright. Being exposed to crucial information does not make us, as politicians, enemies of the state, to manipulate such information for political mileage and point scoring. However, such exposure to information is the very thing that must bring us together for the common good of society to deal with issues our communities are grappling with. I'm saying this due to the fact that with the portfolio on public service and administration, planning, monitoring, and this information for selfish political ends. We will always remember her as a quiet, faithful servant of the people and a patriotic citizen. May her family and friends be comforted by the fact that she played her role fully during her tenure as a mother, family member, and a citizen of our beautiful country, South Africa. May her soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson. House Chair, good afternoon. On behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters, we'd like to pay our respect and pass our condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Ms Z Jongbloed, a colleague to all of us here in Parliament. I served on the Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries Portfolio Committee with Ms Jongbloed. While we may not have always agreed politically, although more members of the DA would like to believe, Ms Jongbloed always believed that all people shared a common need, which found expression in her words and her actions, and it never allowed her, and she never allowed political differences to translate into personal differences. It is this kindness that will be missed and remembered by all members of Parliament. Zelda was a diligent worker and was very active in the portfolio. She had a wonderful sense of humor, and when we were away on oversight, it is one of the wonderful things that one could enjoy being in her company, was a sense of humor. And she was also very gracious. And I remember we were sitting one evening, and we were sitting with other members of the portfolio committee, and she particularly liked Honorable. So it's particularly sad that she's passed away, since she was planning on retiring after this term, and I said I would come and visit her there where she has then settled in Grootbrak. And the quality of Ms. Jongbloed's participation is probably as the result of that extensive community activism and the experience that she's had in journalism. A quality, definite level of quality to her participation in the activities of the portfolio. So I think a former colleague of hers' tribute to her is very fitting. Kam vegte, jou werk is gedaan, jou pen kan nou te rustig gelê word, jou stem is nou een met die heelal, jou hande kan nou rus, jou laaste dans is nou vir ewig in ons geheue vasgevang, jou borrelende gees is 'n gesang te ere jou lieflike Zelda. Baie dankie, voorsitter.
Dankie, achtbare lid. The next speaker is the Honourable Van der Merwe.
Honourable House Chairperson, I'm deeply honoured to rise on behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party to pay tribute to our late colleague, the Honourable Zelda Jongbloed. Her contribution to this fifth Parliament will always be remembered with great admiration. During the many debates that she participated in, she was on those who fail us. Her work ethic and her leadership commanded respect. During my interactions with the Honourable Jongbloed, I was always touched by her kindness and her humble, caring nature. It was such a significant part of her life. She was an inspiration to many, and she carried the hopes, the dreams, and the aspirations of the people of fashion. She held a master's degree in journalism from Rhodes. Ons sal Zelda Jongbloed onthou as een van Suid-Afrika se eerste Afrikaanse struggle-joernaliste. Sy was 'n baanbreker in haar veld. Sy het vir 40 jaar diep spore as 'n joernalis getrap. In 1986, op die jonge ouderdom van 36, word sy redakteur van Rapport Extra. Jongbloed is in 1996 tot adjunkredakteur van Rapport bevorder en sy het in 2012 na 30 jaar by Naspers uitgetree. She was regarded as a mentor and a mother figure. Honourable House Chairperson, the IFP today mourns an accomplished journalist, a dedicated public servant, a graceful and kind but her friends, her loved ones, the leadership of the Democratic Alliance and its caucus at large. To her children, Ulrich, Candace, and Crystal Joy, her 4 grandchildren, her great-grandchild, her brothers and sisters, I wish to leave you with the following words. A golden heart has stopped beating. Hard-working hands are now at rest. It broke our hearts to see her go. Her life was love and labor. What a beautiful legacy it is to leave behind. Let us be inspired by her legacy. It is our duty to continue her work, sharing her passion and being inspired by her example. May her soul rest in peace.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair, Honourable members of this House, and family members of the bereaved. We are assembled here today, our late colleague, the Honourable Zelda Jongbloed. She was awarded the Marcus Viljoen prestigious medal for journalism, a dedicated leader who balanced her family life and public responsibilities. Honourable Chairperson, what stands out for me, the most always greeted, means she rose above politics. Now that is what you call a true leader. Honourable Speaker, her participation in different committees, Chairperson, her contribution and interaction clearly showed her passion to serve the people. Despite the pain and suffering that she endured, loss, she has been a role model to many young aspiring politicians, not forgetting her role as a mother to her children. On behalf of the National Freedom Party, friends and family members, on behalf of to the Democratic Alliance, we express our sincere condolences to you at the loss of such a great leader of such high caliber. You have served South Africa and you have served us well. Surely your untimely death will be felt.
What a life, what a loss. The UDM extends its deepest condolences to the family, friends, and the Democratic Alliance on the sad passing on of Ms. Z Jongbloed. What at once would be a wry smile from her. Zelda, a dedicated public representative, a servant of the people. She fought a long battle with a merciless beast that devours people slowly, painfully, horribly, and, worst of all, a blind beast that doesn't care who it is taking. Cancer is one nightmare that is unjust and devastating to those who go above and beyond to try to keep their loved ones away from their imminent death. Surely, it must have drained her strength and has now left her family and friends with nothing but disdain and a sense of injustice that won't ever be repaired. Unfortunately, to the family, friends, and colleagues, cancer won't ever answer why without her. We feel it in the Committee on Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries. Within a short space of her mark, her name with teeth, but through her shrieking voice. May her soul rest in peace. And we urge the family as the UDM to accept that this was a death that could not have been avoided. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Swart.
On behalf of the African Christian Democratic Party, I would like to extend our sincere condolences to the family and friends of the late Ms. Z Jongbloed, member of the National Assembly. The ACDP learned with shock and sadness of her passing on the 21st of July, 2018, after a long battle with cancer. And I would like to just express my sentiments to the family after what Mr. Fortani says. She concealed her sickness from many to her work with unrestrained servant leadership. And as we have heard, she was the DA's Deputy Shadow Minister for the Portfolio Committee of Agriculture, Forestry, Fisheries, as well as the Public Services and Administration, Performance Monitoring, Evaluation, and Multi-Party Women's Caucus Committee. So she was committed, and I'd like to say to the family as a Member of Parliament that running around from one committee to the next is real deep commitment and sacrifice. Her achievements in the media field, where she achieved great heights, her master's degree, her being the first female editor of Die Burger, shows her pioneering spirit and that she rose above gender, the gender ceiling. And so, from our side, we would like to commend the Honourable Jongbloed for her contribution to the betterment of the lives of all South Africans and her contribution to a constituency and here to Parliament, to her family and friends. Every word that she says is recorded in perpetuity. If you can go to the library, the Hansards are there. So she has left that legacy. Our thoughts and prayers are with you at this time, deeply. Cancer is a debilitating, it's a terrible thing to face as a family. I've walked that path with friends to the point of death, and so I feel deeply for you at this time. And in this time, God is sovereign. One wonders, you pray for healing, but still a loved one is taken away. We share with you at this time. Our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Chaisa.
The Portfolio Committee of Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries. Though she was a journalist, but she would argue current issues like a specialist in that field. She was prepared to listen, to learn, and contribute to the issues of the Portfolio Committee. Fortunately, she had to leave, so it's a great loss that we have to lose a woman of her caliber when we need women the most, so that they contribute to the growth of the economy of our country. Honorable Jongbloed was a very humble person who was prepared to work with any member in the committee from any political party. However, she could not be spared because her name had been called. She was a good member, a good mother to work with, but time had to. This morning, Reverend Mteto said that we were in a queue getting to that place. So each and every one of us is waiting for her name, his or her name to be called. May her soul.
Geachte speaker, achtbare lede van die huis, collega's, familie en kinders van Zelda. Dit is met leedwese voorreg om namens die DA caucus 'n mosie van simpatie aan ons ontslape kollega Zelda Jongbloed te lewer. Die caucus sukkel nog om haar ontydige heengaan te verwerk. En ek moet erken, ons was verryk deur haar teenwoordigheid. And I remember when she received the diagnosis of cancer, she asked me softly, "Why don't I feel any different?" And as if I just received a death sentence. Right through her illness, she remained hopeful, and she was never afraid of dying. She was rather blasé about it. Uit die standpunt moet ek sê dat Zelda geanker gebly het in haar familie. Veral haar kinders en kleinkinders was vir haar belangrik en het hier geen kompromie toegelaat nie. Hulle was altyd eerste. Naas hulle was die mense van Grootbrak. Voorwaar 'n seder het in Grootbrak geval. Suid-Afrika het vir Zelda Jongbloed leer ken as 'n joernalis. Met haar toetrede tot die journalistiek het sy deur die konvensies van die tyd gebreek. Sy het eerstens werk gemaak in 'n beroep waar meestal beset was deur mans. Ten tweede, die land se apartheidswet het mense in hokke geplaas en jy moes inval. En sy het hierdie berg in 'n goudmyn verander en baanbrekerswerk gedoen vir baie kwessies van haar tyd. Die bevrydingsbewegings, die UDR-lating, sosiale bewustheid by haar lesers aangewakker. Voorwaar 'n struggle joernalis wat nog verlang onthou gaan word. Sy het 'n nalatenskap. Ek was hier en ek sal onthou word. Haar toetrede tot die so asof hulle bang was hulle verloor iets belangrik wat sy mag sê. Zelda se ingaan het voorwaar 'n leemte in hierdie 5de parlement gelaat en baie dankie vir die woorde van bemoediging. As politicus was Zelda, achtbare speaker, collega's, as mens was Zelda nie eendimensioneel nie. Sy het teenpole in haar vergestald. Sy was sag soos sy, maar tog ook so ferm soos 'n rots. Haar stem was sag, tog het almal haar duidelik gehoor. Sy het min gepraat, maar baie gesê. Ernstig, maar met 'n fyn sin vir humor en kon sy lag wanneer sy die kans gekry het. Baie het haar as 'n warm mens beskryf en sy was hoogs intelligent met 'n groot liefde vir die kuns en die estetiese. En een van haar groot karaktereienskappe was dat sy was ryk in medemenslikheid. Sy het omgegee vir die armes en bovenal het sy 'n diepe liefde vir hierdie land gehad en haar stryd was altyd teen onreg wat teenoor die mense gepleeg was en nog steeds gepleeg word. Sy het haar roeping geleef lank. She wrestled with God about the essence of her life and being here. Towards the end, she said to me, "I think I have time as this, and I would not have preferred to live at a different lifetime." she found her calling. And I cite the poet with the same existential struggle that Zelda had, N.P. van Wyk Louw, from an excerpt from the prophet. En toch het u rus beloof van diepe kuile onder die stormwind van u vereiste daad. U het nie woord gehou met my, o Heer, u het alles geëis, my menslike waardigheid, my dinge soos voddes van my afgeskeer en my naak gemaak om die gevreesde weg van God te gaan. Zelda's legacy will remain long after her parting. Although her photos may lifelessly adorn journal of past years, her spirit will forever be present in our moments of quiet reflection. Yes, indeed, Zelda Jongbloed was a great soul that left us. As Mayor Angelo would word it in a... I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Grootboom. That, honorable members, concludes the speakers list on this matter. I take it that there are no objections to the motion being adopted. Will members please rise to observe a moment of silence in the memory of Mrs. Z Jongbloed. Thank you very much. You may be seated. The presiding officers associate themselves with the motion, and condolences of the House will be conveyed to the Jongbloed family. Thank you. I will now ask the Secretary to read the first order of the day.
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of Minamata Convention on Mercury in terms of Section 2312 of Constitution.
Thank you. The Chairperson of the committee, Honorable Mapulani, will introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members. Mercury is rated as one of the top 10 chemical poisons endangering human health and the natural environment. Cosmetics. It is in the air, it is in the water, in soil, everywhere. In varying amounts. Science has played a key role in establishing mercury as a global pollutant and also in pinpointing its global distribution. Its changing cycle in response to local environmental disturbances and its health and environmental impacts. Countries have voluntarily worked together to address mercury risk under the United Nations Environment Programme, Global Mercury Partnership to reduce mercury use and discharges and to draw attention to environmental and human health risks from mercury in the early 2000s. However, there came a time when voluntary efforts of individual countries could not adequately address the increasing risk of this liquid metal to human health and the environment in its different facets. Mercury, honorable members, is an extremely toxic chemical. Members will recall in Cato Ridge, KwaZulu-Natal in the early 1990s. The need to holistically manage this toxic chemical led the international community to negotiate and agree on a global treaty for a complete ban on any new mercury mines, the gradual phase out of mercury in several households and industrial products, and tougher measures to store and get rid of mercury waste. This treaty, called the Minamata Convention on Mercury, was concluded at and subsequently named after the Japanese city of Minamata, where nearly 2,000 people died and more than 10 water discharged by the Chiso Corporation's chemical factory in January 2013, and it was adopted in October 2013. South Africa was among the first mercury, particularly in light of ongoing research that indicates South Africa as the 6th largest emitter in the world, with annual emissions amounting to around 50 tons. Consequently, South Africa has done significant work on ensuring that mercury, there is an inventory on mercury from various sources as far back as 2012, using the relevant levels of the United Nations Environmental Programme Toolkit. The convention entered into force on the 16th of August 2017, having reached the threshold number of countries which have ratified the treaty. And therefore, South Africa needs to ratify the Minamata Convention on Mercury, fundamentally to secure multilateral financial assistance. There is a global environmental facility which is a financial mechanism for supporting developing countries to implement their obligations. Similarly, there is technical assistance, capacity building, and technological transfer provisions under the convention, which also provide for technical assistance to developing countries like ourselves. This treaty, honorable members, will assist us in providing safe and healthy food to our people, especially those who love eating fish, because mercury levels in the South African fish have been reported to be increasing yearly. Having the capacity to reduce and phase out mercury would protect the coastal population who depend on fish for their survival. I would therefore, Honorable Chair, like to invite this august House to ratify this convention called the Minamata Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Are there any objections to the approval of the Minamata Convention on Mercury as it appears on the order paper? Honorable Waters?
Chair, there's no objection, but we would like to make a declaration. Thank you.
Declaration being requested, I will allow the GA. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. The chairperson of the committee explained how it works and all the technical stuff, but what I want to do is I want to go and explain it a little bit more in layman's terms. So let's take a moment and see how mercury affects us on a daily basis. So visualize a young woman. She's around about 31. Let's call her Bontle. She lives in an informal settlement close to a massive power station, and she makes use of the local clinic for her prenatal checkup. Sorry, she's also, let's say, pregnant. To ensure a healthy lifestyle, she eagerly grows her little veggie garden behind her house. But lately, Bontle has problems. Even though she cooks healthy food every night from her vegetable garden. So now we have the scenario, but before I go on, it's very important to know, remember, during the whole speech, is that mercury is a heavy metal. Mercury can be released and emitted through industrial processes like mining. It can be emitted through forest fires, the incineration of waste, and burning of fossil fuels, which includes coal-fired power stations. It's also commonly found in everyday products that we all use, like batteries, switches, fluorescent lights, certain cosmetics, as well as some older medical equipment. So then the question is, but how does it affect Bontle, or me, or you? Well, it's in the air that you breathe. It's in mercury. Upwards, whatever you grow in the soil will also be contaminated. Mercury can affect animals that eat grass or the plants. It will go into the animals and then it can contaminate the human body. It's also in fresh water as well as the ocean. which means that it can travel around the world. So mercury contamination can happen in another country, but it can affect South Africa. What happens then when you ingest it? So the simple answer is that it's extremely serious health risks that could actually lead to death. Let me explain a little bit more. Mercury has serious effects on the immune system, on the digestive system, on the lungs, on the kidneys, and it can cause significant damage to one's nervous system. It's got extreme, like for example, high levels of mercury in a pregnant woman can cause a lower IQ in the unborn baby even before it is born. It can furthermore lead to lower fertility in women, brain damage, motor neuron diseases, as well as heart disease. So when we go back to Bontle, she lives next to the power station, which burns fossil fuels, which means she breathes in through the air. She regularly visits her local clinic. She's sick often. Her lungs, her kidneys, her lower immune system, that's all because of the mercury. Now, just an interesting fact is that the state hospitals and clinics still uses equipment such as thermometers or blood pressure equipment that contains mercury. Private hospitals don't allow that anymore. She grows her own veggies. She also eats her own veggies, but the soil is contaminated. That's also a way to get it in. And she has a coal stove to keep the winter nights warmer and also to cook. It's lower levels, but it's still emitting mercury. Now, the DA would like to emphatically state that this affects us all, but most of all, the poorest of the poor. Another major concern is, as the chairperson mentioned, is the mercury incident in Kittredge. But there's still around 50 barrels of mercury sludge standing in Kittredge that we haven't done anything with. Finally, it's all good and well to make nice speeches or heckle because I say Bontle, or go around telling people that it's so great. But the big issue is going to be when we ratify. The real work will have to start then. Government must ensure that the needed monitoring and enforcement happens. But if history is anything to go by, I'm really sorry, but I have very little confidence. So, as a final statement, why don't we put on our big boy pants and stop granting the major emitters extension after extension after extension instead of just complying with our local air quality laws. Thank you.
Thank you. EFF.
Thank you very much, Chair. The EFF supports the Minamata Convention on Mercury, whose aim is to rally the global and naturally occurring compound released through volcanic activity. Our greatest threat to mercury exposure in this country comes from gold and coal mining. This form, a human-induced release of mercury compound, is the greatest contributing factor to mercury pollution in the world. It is therefore disheartening that despite all this, yet our government is doing very little to hold those responsible to account. More shocking is the renewed commitment by the Department of Minerals to continue shale gas fracking in the Karoo with all the attendant risk it poses for our environment. We therefore plead that we should not rush to signing global treaties when we have no desire at all to act locally to reduce pollution by changing the way we view development. The EFF supports the spirit in which the Minamata Convention was written. Thank you very much.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. The Chairperson of the committee, Honourable Mapulane, has elucidated and followed by Honourable Member from the DA about what mercury can and cannot do, but more the harm of mercury in our food, in the air. So I'm not going to go into that. But having said that, I want to agree, Honourable Chairperson, with the member from the EFF about acid mine drainage. It is a serious problem, and it's going to cost this country and the taxpayers of this country billions to rectify this problem. And we should get these mining companies that were responsible for acid mine drainage to actually pay for the damage that they caused. Chemical waste on the planet, phasing out of existing mines, and seeks reductions in this deadly chemical from household products, as well as providing more stringent measures with regard to the storage and containment of mercury waste. Government must take the lead in eradicating further emissions of this chemical and install new pollution control technology at all mercury-generating government entities, one such example being at Eskom. Reductions must also be implemented in our artisanal and small-scale gold mining practices. The IFP fully supports the Minamata Convention, for we support mercury emissions and implement controls by adopting. Consider this convention, we need to be more vigilant on the use of pesticides, certain pesticides in agricultural practices, the release of obnoxious gases by chemical-producing industries which impact on the surrounding communities, the Durban South Basin being a case in point. And we also need to look at GMOs and their effect on our health. A statement will be moved by the Honourable Hlengwa in this regard. Most deaths, Honourable Chairperson, are caused by the air we breathe and the food we eat, besides genetic problems that we carry. So we have to make sure that the air we breathe is clean and that the food we eat is free from any harmful organisms. So we support this convention. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. NFP?
House Chairperson, let us also, as the NFP, add our voice on supporting the convention, and we also support the report presented by the Chairperson on this portfolio. Having said that, Chairperson, I believe I have to agree with my colleagues who have said that charity begins at home, and the government must ensure that there is enough legislation, especially in our own country, that will have to deal with this deadly chemical mercury. The Chairperson made an example of some people who died in Hammersdale because of the chemical. But it seems to me there is lack of knowledge among us all with regard to this, because we may be sitting here, but we inhale the air that comes from the metals. Let's think of the areas where we throw our debt, where your life, because you are always absent at school. But all of a sudden it was found that they were inhaling the pollution that came from the factories around. So, and it was later found that there is a chemical that they were inhaling. So I want to say that as a country, we have a responsibility to ensure that we begin with the legislation that may be piloted to deal with this issue. And most of us have our houses around cities, and there's a lot of air that we inhale coming from the oil, the gas, etc. And nothing cares about that until we are sick. But I believe, Chairperson, we need to go deeper and say the Department of Science and also all the entities that deal with science need to put together our scientists to ensure that we go deeper, we do research in trying to ensure that we prevent it in our country, but more so, we need legislation that will be piloted to ensure that we deal with the situation. Having said that, Chairperson, we support the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. ANC?
Thank you, House Chairperson. Once again, the country under the ANC government is on the right track, but pursuing the ratification of this particular convention. As it is being agreed upon by all the parties here, that no party is against this particular treaty as introduced by the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. We all know by now that mercury is a naturally occurring heavy metal which can cause toxic effects on humans and the environment. And there are also man-made mercury emissions which are mostly called anthropogenic activities, primarily coming from gold mining, using mercury and combustion of coal, especially in coal-fired power stations. And the health effects include significant damage to the nervous system, to the immune and digestive systems, lungs and kidneys. And acute exposure to this can cause neurological and behavioral disorders and can even be fatal. Yes, people do die under it. Our government has done two kind of investigations before pursuing the ratification. One undertaken by DIA was a mercury inventory using UNEP Toolkit Level 1, because several sectors emit huge volumes of mercury in various ways, and that ranges from coal combustion, cement production, oil and gas production, waste incineration, dental amalgam, and primary metal production. The other was on developing a detailed inventory toolkit 2 that does cost-benefit analysis and socio-economic questions. But all we want to say is that as we are ready on it, there are benefits for us to be a party to this treaty in terms of mercury waste handling, dealing with contaminated sites, provision of does comply with the standards that will be set as we shall have ratified this particular treaty as Parliament. Once more, the ANC moves that the convention be ratified. Honorable House Chair.
I thank you very much. I will repeat, are there any objections to the motion? No objections agreed to. Second, the Secretary will read the second order.
Of Southern African Development Community Protocol on Environmental Management for Sustainable Development in terms of Section 2312 of the Constitution.
Thank you. Honorable Mapulani, Chairperson, give us the election.
Thank you very much once more, House Chairperson, and good afternoon, honorable members. The South African Development Community SADC Protocol on Environmental Management for Sustainable Development was signed by the former President on behalf of South Africa at the 34th SADC Summit in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe on the 18th of August, 2014. The protocol intends to facilitate harmonization of policies, strategies, and legal framework to enhance regional integration among member states of SADC in the field of environmental management. The main objective of the protocol is to promote sustainable utilization and transboundary management of the environment, which is of interest to SADC member states. The protocol is in line with the objectives of the National Development Plan, which prioritizing of integration of the SADC region as well as ensuring environmental sustainability and equitable transition to a low-carbon economy. Furthermore, the protocol is consistent with South Africa's constitution, in particular Section 24 of the Bill of Rights on Environment, which enshrines the right of everyone to an environment that is not harmful to their health and well-being, and to have the environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations. Accordingly, the ratification of this protocol by the House will not compromise the territorial integrity of South Africa. The protocol recognizes that the environment is linked to global security in respect of issues such as climate change, desertification, biodiversity loss, diminishing water resources, legislation, law enforcement, and natural resources, and provides for collaboration in environmental law enforcement between state parties. This is very significant for South Africa considering the scourge of transboundary environmental crimes that bedevil our country, as illustrated abundantly by the poaching of rhinos, elephants, and other species in our national parks and other protected areas. The protocol further calls for state parties to undertake gender mainstreaming of all environmental management, climate change and sustainable development policies, programs, projects, strategies, and budgets. A matter which is at the heart of the struggles against the triple oppression of women in our country. The protocol has no financial implications as there are no membership fees required by the protocol. However, states shall endeavor to allocate the necessary funds for the effective implementation of this protocol at national level. This will need to be sourced from the national budget allocation of the Department of Environmental Affairs, as well as relevant provinces where transboundary environmental programs have been adopted for implementation, as the cost of administering and managing the activities of this protocol shall be borne by states parties. In terms of Article 35, the protocol shall come into force 30 days after the instruments of ratifications have been deposited by non-member states. I must say, Honorable House Chair, that it is disappointing to note that although 10 member states have signed the protocol, only one of them has ratified this protocol to date. And that's why it's very important management for.
Are there any objections to the approval of the SADC protocol on environmental management for sustainable development as it appears on the order paper? Honorable Waters?
Chair, there's no objection, but the DA would like to make a declaration.
Declaration allowed, the DA.
Let us remind ourselves that the overall objective of this protocol is to promote sustainable utilization and transboundary management of the environment within the SADC region. Another specific objective is to enhance the protection of the environment in order to contribute to human health, well-being, and poverty alleviation. Globally, the issue of human impact on natural resources has mostly been framed within a broader debate about sustainability. The tension between a concern for human needs and the extent of destructive human demands on nature, inequality and poverty. At the same time, ensuring that there is growth in the country's economy. This is referred to as sustainable development. Economic development without depleting natural resources. There is no doubt that if the sustainable development debate is to have any value, it must address the challenge of relationships between people in their use of nature and the rest of the biosphere. The phrase roots lie a long way back in the history of European and wider global thinking, but the concept began to be widely adopted following the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm in 1972. The idea of environmental limits or constraints on development was explored by a number of environmentalists around the start of the 1980s under the label of eco-development, and it was central concept in the World Conservation Strategy published in 1980. Most importantly, it was the foundation of the report of the World Commission on Environment and Development 7 years later. At its launch in April 1988, it was claimed that this report, Our Common Future, set out an agenda for change. This was a monumental achievement for the sustainability and preservation of the environment for future generations. The DA welcomes the SADC Protocol on Environmental Management for Sustainable Development as it is consistent with South Africa's Constitution. Section 24 on the environment advocates secure, ecologically sustainable development and use of natural resources while promoting justifiable economic and social development. While the protocol recognizes that pollution and waste is currently faced with the porous border control and epic wild, and only one is ratified, which is of concern. South Africa's tenure as in political will is a requisite to achieve sustainable environmental development. The DA will therefore commit itself to the principles of good environmental governance as a benchmark for balanced decision-making across government departments, including sustainable development, the polluter pays principle, the precautionary principle, and the preventative principle. Deal efficiently with environmental externalities. Access to a thriving natural environment for everyone across urban and rural areas, regardless of social, economic, or ethnic background, now and into the future. The DA supports the ratification of this protocol.
Chair, the EFF supports the ratification of the SADC Protocol on Environmental Management for Environmental challenge today requires a coordinated regional strategy to pull resources together to fight against the poaching of our natural resources, to develop common policies for climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. More importantly, we need a coordinated framework for a new kind of development that does not rely on exploitation of fossil fuels, but on sustainable utilization of renewable forms of energy in a manner that does not threaten our ecosystems. More crucially, the region needs a new approach to environmental management and biodiversity convention, one that does not alienate the people, but view the people as an integral part of the ecosystem. The department, through its entities, however, continues to alienate the people, no chance of a long-lasting and sustainable protection of that critical ecosystem without involving the people. Thank you very much.
We thank you. Honorable Singh, IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Firstly, Honorable Chairperson, on the question of sustainable development, I want to congratulate the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and his committee for having organized a colloquium on an impact of captive bred lion hunting. I think it was very well received by not only the domestic but international communities. And I hope, Minister of Tourism, you will take note of some of the outcomes of that two-day colloquium, because it will impact on tourism in South Africa. And I know the Minister of Environmental Affairs was there, and it was good that she was there, and she presented government's side of the story. But I think there needs to be a meeting of minds. So congratulations, Honorable Mapulana. I don't know where you're seated, and to the committee. He made an important point about wildlife and rhino poaching, and I think that is something that takes court at this moment in time. I do hope Minister of Safety and easily into our neighboring countries. But having said that, Honorable Chairperson, we support this protocol that needs to be ratified, but there are certain areas of concern domestically that we have to deal with. For example, the discharge of effluent from land-based sources into our coastal environment, and this impacts on livelihoods. People fish from these rivers, get fish from the river and the oceans. People still drink water from these rivers in rural areas. Although we need to look at the ocean and coast ecosystem, because these services are important for agriculture and for trade and industry. But having said that, we are in full support, Chairperson, of the request by the department in terms of Section 231 of the Constitution to sign and ratify the SADC protocol. We think it's going to be helpful if all countries, neighboring countries, buy into this. It is a matter of concern, Honorable Chairperson, that that is not happening at this moment in time, and we cannot be the only country in isolation that comes up with these wonderful regulations and legislation to find that some of our neighbors do not comply. The world and the universe is for all of us, and every country needs to come to the party in this regard. So again, we support the ratification of this protocol. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Professor Kuvisa, NFP.
House Chairperson, we want also to support the report led by the Chairperson earlier on. Now, as the NFP would have wished to see that even all the SADC countries are able to sign and ratify the protocol as such. because it has an impact on our international tourism, it has an impact on our cultural tourism, and also domestic tourism. We find that most of our people are not well educated when it comes to our diversity. Just recently, Chairperson, I read a very interesting article by the Minister of this department around the importance of lions and the rhinos, and also understanding what is it that is happening with our rhinos, the poaching that is happening. And people come from outside and they poach our rhinos and they go and sell the horns in the international market, thus reducing our own assets that we have as a country. And most of the people will go to the rural areas where we have some parks and natural resources, and you'll find that they poach, and find that the traditional leaders have not been assisted to ensure that they keep an eye on these resources. We find that our people will go along the seas, the coastlines, and they will use these high vehicles, and they destroy some species, the natural indigenous species that we need. So all these issues are very important. And one other issue which I think is very important, Chairperson, is the issue around the weather and climate issues. And when this protocol is signed and ratified, it will assist that all of us within the SADC region will be able to educate our people around issues of climatic change and weather as such, because you find that there are heavy rainfalls and our people will die unawares. And if there is education around those matters, and these matters are well managed, we find that we will all be on par on these issues of environmental management for sustainable development. On that note, Chairperson, I want to support the signing and ratification of the protocol. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The ANC, the whip of the committee, Babu Makube.
Thanks again, House Chairperson. Honorable members, the main objective of this protocol is to promote sustainable utilization and transboundary management of the environment, as already have been said. And it's interesting that all of us are in agreement in this regard that it should be ratified. It is also to ensure that to attaining all sustainable development goals, including those on environment. In this particular regard, because we do have the capacity in all to implement this protocol have been put in place, and the ratification of this protocol is a major step that would witness its domestication. The challenges that result from the fact that some countries don't play their part in this regard should be resolved, and it is about time that SADC countries take issues of environment seriously. As ANC, we are in support of its ratification. Thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Arts and Culture on visit to Enyokeni Cultural Precinct and KwaZulu-Natal Museum.
Thank you. Can I now allow Honorable Makonto to introduce the report?
Thanks, Chairperson. Honorable members, the Portfolio Committee of Arts and Culture conducted an oversight visit to KwaZulu-Natal province on the 14th and 15th September 2017. Two places were subject of the oversight, which are KwaZulu-Natal Museum in Pietermaritzburg and Enyokeni Cultural Precinct in Nongoma. KwaZulu-Natal, the Portfolio Committee on Arts and Culture visited KwaZulu-Natal to check progress on GRAP 103. The KwaZulu-Natal Museum was qualified by the Auditor General of South Africa because of GRAP 103. During the visit, the committee made the following observation. The institution is in need of a bigger and more appropriate museum. The Department of Arts and Culture identified and purchased an old St. and hospital as the site for new purpose-built for KwaZulu-Natal Museum. The museum has a challenge of staff retention. The museum is working on GRAP 103 and has appointed staff to capture the heritage asset. The museum needs a strong and capable in-house research team. The committee made the following recommendations. The department should put an operational plan in place on how it will embark on making the building habitable and user-friendly for the museum staff and all the species in the museum. The space where scientists conduct their work must be separated from the space where fossils are kept because fossils require a certain temperature. The department and the entity should speed up the job evaluation and grading process as a matter of urgency to address staff migration. The museum must speed up the process of assets evaluation. The second place, Chair, where we conducted our oversight is in Nongoma Enyokeni Cultural Precinct project. The portfolio committee discovered that Arts and Culture Department was developing Enyokeni Cultural Precinct through independent trust as an implementing agent. And the project was not in the annual performance plan and therefore not budgeted for. 131 million rand was spent irregularly. And here are some of the findings that emanated from the visit to Enyokeni Cultural Precinct. The department appointed IDT and did not do oversight on them. The breakdown of relations between department and IDT resulting in the contract with IDT cancelled for non-performance. The lack of monitoring by the Department of Arts and Culture on allocated funds, no clear ownership of the precinct when the precinct was to it, as well as no maintenance plan. The committee made the following recommendation to the department. The Department of Arts and Culture must regularize the Enyokeni Cultural Precinct project and close off and hand over the completed work to the provincial government and the district municipality. The department must finish up what have been already started. The department should put together a planned and financial breakdown of the funding of the roof and the ablution facility. Work that is outsourced should be properly monitored to minimize shoddy workmanship and to maximize return on investments. Chairperson will therefore submit that the report be adopted.
I thank you, Honorable Makonjo. I now recall Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thanks, House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. There's a request for declarations.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Grootboom.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The report is a true reflection of the findings. However, there are pertinent issues that are still outstanding and in need of serious intervention. The initial funding of the Enyokeni project was irregular as mentioned. Funding for this project must be regularized. Secondly, because of the lack of proper planning, the costing of the Enyokeni project is still not finalized. In future, government must not proceed on work on a pay-as-you-go basis. In future, government must ensure that they have complete specifications when entering into such projects. Thirdly, the report did not speak to the issues of the forensic investigation, audit, and the subsequent consequence management. We found of proper monitoring. If we are serious about corruption as a government, we need to put deeds to our work, to our words, and act decisively. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, are you coming there? Yes.
No, thanks, House Chair. This committee report is clear indication of the state of the Department of Arts and Culture, a state of chaos and mismanagement, with incompetence and corruption being the norm. The Enyokeni Cultural Precinct project was never part of the annual plans, performance plans, and this is purely the fault of the Department of Arts and Culture. How is it possible to do a project worth millions of rands where there is no budgeting and costing done? A lack of professionalism, a lack of will, and basic understanding of how to plan and budget is why the contract between the IDT was cancelled and why the department had no mechanism in place to monitor how the funds allocated were spent. If you do not have a plan, you cannot know how much money is needed. This allows for corruption to happen easily without anyone noticing or being able to account for the money that goes missing. Or it results in building simple not being completed, like the roof of the ablution facilities, because the budget runs out. On top of this, there was no official handover of the project, so who is responsible for maintenance? Nobody. And because of this, the Enyokeni Precinct project is already experiencing a maintenance issue. A 2.5 megaliter water tank is already leaking, and the atmosphere amphitheater, which this department spent 37 million of taxpayers' money on, is already.
Honorable Esther Raisin, IFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. Although I was not part of the oversight visit to KwaZulu-Natal, the IFP supports the report but would like to mention a few observations. Chairperson, it's apparent that there's really a deep-rooted problem in the department, and there's no clear understanding of the roles and functions of the officials and executive leadership in the Department of Arts and Culture. The breakdown of relations between this department and the independent-related tariffs, which resulted in 28.6 million rand in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. There's additionally no record of official handovers or maintenance contract with contractors. Already, as mentioned, massive water tanks are leaking, walls are cracked, in some cases roofs are not even covered, and buildings completed with where full payment has already been made. Also, appointment of contractors in some cases seem orchestrated to favor certain individuals. This should not be allowed within the structures of this institution, or rather this department, Honourable Chairperson. Incompetent contractors, renovations that never finalized, resulting in the community losing the privilege and access to these state-owned culture centres paid for by the taxpayers. Deficiencies and internal controls are resulting in inadequate processes and monitoring controls. We should ensure that reliable performances and functional informed is produced, which is not the case, and which means that laws and regulations have not been complied with. The DIC budget every year allocates millions of rands in order to strengthen its internal control and compliances, and needless to say that it's not what the committee found, and there was no compliance and even worse internal controls. I thank you.
Raleboga. Professor, NFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm doing this on behalf of my colleague. Now, it is noticed that the department had to use 131 million without any budget, without being in the APP for 2014-2015. There was no planning for the 2014-2015, and there was no budget at all for the facility. Now, we know, Chairperson, that this issue has received much publicity and negative publicity, whereas it was the fault of the department. And additional phases had to be put in without approval. and there was lack of a plan, and there was no contractual agreement signed between the department and IDT. And as a result, the department lost at least 28.6 million in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And there was no lack of monitoring on how the project was progressing. And also there was no handover afterwards, only to find that the project had some leaks, yet it's a very important project, Enyokeni project that has to do with the reed dance and other cultural activities. And there are also other outstanding facilities, e.g. the ablution facilities, and the roof was not covered, it was just left like that. The quality of work was very shoddy for an amount, ended up being 37.9 million. So having said that, Chairperson, we want to urge that the department will monitor all its projects, because after the project was handed over, found that shoddy work was done. And we support the report, and we hope that there will be caution given to the department to ensure that the money for the department is well spent and the government fiscus is not wasted.
Thank you. Any project was initiated in the 4th Parliament. We supported Minister Mteto in instituting forensic audits on Enyokeni. We dealt with the matter extensively in the Portfolio Committee, and we did not pull our punches back. On our visit to Enyokeni, we discovered that there were unfinished projects. However, there was a super water supply community, the community that is faced with scarcity of water. We then recommended that such project must be handed over to the District of Zululand. It is our collective view that the Enyokeni Precinct projects do not form part of the mandate of the department, and that on conclusion, the project be handed over to the Zululand District for maintenance. It is therefore our request as the ANC that the House should support the adoption of this report.
Thank you very much. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. I will now ask the Secretary to read the 4th order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Arts and Culture on governance workshop with chairpersons and deputy chairpersons of Department of Arts and Cultural Entities.
Thank you very much. Before I call on you, Honorable Member, I just want to welcome our learners with the teachers in the gallery from Milton Mfumedzeni Secondary School in Limpopo, Vembe District. Le amogetšwe ke parlamenteng ya lena ya setšhaba. Aha. Honorable.
Thanks, Chairperson. Honorable members, the Portfolio Committee on Arts and Culture held a governance workshop with the 26 entities of the department represented by chairpersons and deputy chairperson. This happened after the Portfolio Committee rounded up these entities during the term. During this period, the committee picked up similar challenges in some of the entities. However, there are some of the entities which are a symbol of excellence, such as Freedom Park, Playhouse Company, Iziko, and many more. Some of the challenges the Portfolio Committee met in the main were governance issues, which are the area of board of directors or councils as the executive authority of these entities. Some of the challenges relate to good governance, GRAP 103, continued rising of legal costs, bad and poor record keeping, and law for various entities to share the best of good practice. And the workshop raised some of the challenges which are as follows. The remuneration of council members was problematic as the stipend was not worth the amount of work that they were tasked with. The absence of council or board members, which left the entities vulnerable as chief executive officers often taken decisions that are illegal. The 3-year time frame for councils or board is too short, that it should be extended to 5 years. Poor alignment with the department's strategic plans and those of the entities, the collusions of officials in the department with chief executive officers, which often derails the mandate and the functioning of these entities. The Department of Arts and Culture's lack of support on councils, the lack of retention strategy which results on loss of staff morale, challenges that relates to fundraising. The committee recommends that the Department of Arts and Culture should hold follow-up governance workshop with the chairpersons have taken up their place in these entities. They are beginning to perform their oversight responsibility. We have seen such an improvement in entities such as Robben Island, Nelson Mandela Museum, Market Theatre, Msuruzi Museum, and many more entities. This improvement will ensure that these entities are geared to attain their objectives as set out in their strategic plans. As we know that arts, culture, and heritage sector contribute over 90 billion rand in the economy and is the biggest job creator, we therefore submit this report to be adopted, Chairperson.
Akenza Tatana Makondo. I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. We move that the report be adopted by this House.
The motion is that the report be adopted, and I've seen a request for declaration. Agbare let Grootboom.
Dankie, achtbare voorzitter. I want to congratulate the chairperson of the committee to initiate the process of getting the entities together after the portfolio committee identified the same issues in all entities. 2 issues remain unresolved. These pertain to the implementation of GRAP 103. Even though Treasury did make concessions, it remains an issue. Funding of the implementation and the security issues attached to the implementation. Having said, entities must still ensure that all assets are on record. Secondly, the jobs created are at best a short-term panacea to unemployment and are therefore thus not sustainable in the long run. However, the potential exists to create a vibrant arts community. A sore point of concern, honourable members, is the litigations against the department. It is a serious issue that eats away the morale of the workforce. Furthermore, serious accusations have been levelled against the Department of Arts and Culture by the entities in that they want to wrestle control over the entities through the CEO, thus subverting the oversight role of the boards that speaks to corporate governance, financial obligations, and ensuring that the entity delivers on its key performance indicators. We have also taken note of the manual for the induction of board members. The plight is that Department of Arts and Culture themselves should not undermine the guidelines set out therein. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Paulson, UFF.
Thank you, Chair. The Department of Arts and Culture is the root cause of poor governance, endless litigations, poor record management, low morale, and corruption within its entities. The department has failed to provide leadership not only to its entities, but also within the department itself. The department has not experienced stability in its management level and has not appointed a qualified manager in more than a decade. Hence, corruption is rampant in the department. What is happening in arts, cultural, and heritage institutions is simply a manifestation of what is happening in the Department of Arts and Culture. However, as the EFF, With our understanding of these entities, their long history of struggle with resources, lack of capacity, and the deliberate efforts by the ANC government to let our heritage, culture, and arts fade into insignificance, we have proposed a restructuring of governance, allocation of resources, and revitalization of the arts and culture heritage. First, because of the size, location, and mandate, not every emphasis in all manner of speaking, but also we must mentor and train artists with management skills to appoint them to lead and manage these institutions because they have intimate knowledge and experience of their sector. Arts, culture, and heritage is not a by-the-way thing. It's an important part of society's transformation, preservation of history, and a meaningful way to build communities in a harmonious way. But the ANC treats this sector like leprosy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Pulse, Akbar Lead, Jester Hazen, IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, at the outset I must mention again that I was not part of this workshop. The IFP supports the report but would like to make the following observations. Chairperson, we view with certain amount of concern the continuing conflict between officials of the department and the chief executive officers that in the worst scenarios derail the mandate and the functionality. The attendees indicated that they had no idea where the power lies, who they are really reporting to. It was also reported that nobody from the attendees knew who was responsible for appointing the council and board members or on what basis. That in the absence of the said board members created a problem. Chairperson, the deep-rooted problems at this entity cannot be solved merely by throwing additional funds at its many problems. This department has been plagued by poor administration and executive leadership. We therefore agree that and are in full support with the recommendation that the Department of Arts and Culture should hold a follow-up governance workshop with the chairperson as a matter of urgency. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor, NFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. We support the report. It's clear that there is no strategic alignment, and matters of corporate governance also were not considered. It's clear, therefore, from the report that boards need to be workshopped, boards and CEOs need to be workshopped on how to run the entities and also how to work with the department. It is also noticeable the department is allocating about 3.2 billion to the entities. And therefore, should be clear on how the entities assist in job creation. In other words, we need some value for money. And the department must also monitor this. Find that there are issues of litigation that go on unabatedly and they are not resolved, whereas these issues could have been solved inwardly within the department without wasting government resources. And there are issues of conflict resolution. Matters of record keeping and asset management are not taken into cognizance. Sometimes there's a vacuum and the CEO would take the position of the chair of the council or the board, or the chair of the board will behave as if he's the CEO. All these matters need to be taken into cognizance. We therefore agree with the report that there should be further workshopping on this matter so that there be alignment between the department and the entities. We support the report.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lady ANC.
House Chair, we took a decision as a committee to have workshops with chairperson and deputies of the entities that are under the Department of Arts and Culture. This decision was taken after we have visited entities that were functioning exceptionally well and those that were performing badly. With regard to good governance, job creation, GREP 103, legal fees, record managing system, and low morale of employees. This workshop was very critical and important in order to make sure that entities share experiences with other sister entities who are not performing well. The committee also deliberated on the GREP 103, and we want to reiterate our take that there is bad and there is good in this accounting practice. and we believe in introducing it, we did not apply our minds on the negative impact of GREP 103, especially on institutions like your natural museums, your natural history museum, and the other ordinary museums. The first world countries have not even applied this accounting practice. The security measures required to accompany this practice require millions of rands, and we do not have them. Nevertheless, we recommend that the department should consider having this workshop annually to allow entities to share good practice. We request that the House support the adoption of this report.
Thank you very much. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Order, honorable members, we now come to motions without notice. Does any member of the ANC wish to give a motion without notice?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes with great sadness the passing on of one of Africa's great anti-imperialist intellect, Samir Amin, on Sunday, the 12th of August 2018, at the age of 86. Also notes that Comrade Samir was simultaneously an author of critical scholarship on alternative radical development perspectives for the Third World, and a fearless anti-colonial fighter who inspired generations of progressive activists worldwide. Recognizes that his influence has shaped the critical discourse that is so necessary in order for progressive governments and revolutionary movements to break free from imperialist influence. Believes that the revolutionary movement, especially in the Third World, have been robbed of one of a few remaining great minds in the fight for progressive social economic change. Further, believes that the ideas of and profound humanity will continue to inspire generations of revolutionaries to carry on the fight for an alternative and progressive development path, and conveys its deepest condolences to his family, friends, and comrades. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. GA?
Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes Zimbabwe held its harmonized elections on the 30th of July 2018, congratulates the people of Zimbabwe for holding peaceful elections, acknowledges of state resources and state media bias. Further acknowledge that the perception that the delay in the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission announcement of the results that might have led to the unnecessary tensions. Register our concern regarding the post-election violence where 6 people reportedly died, having been shot by the army, and further calls for calm and restraint as the people of Zimbabwe and the international community awaits the judgment of the Constitutional Court tomorrow regarding the outcomes of the elections, and commits to respecting the outcomes. The people of Zimbabwe deserve a government that will serve their and elected through a free and fair process. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. EFF?
Thank you, Chair. I hereby rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters that the House note that on the 21st of August 1791, who are willing to do everything necessary to free themselves from the yoke of their white colonial slave masters. We consider the Haitian Revolution as the most successful slave rebellion in history. It is the only slave rebellion to ever result in the creation of an independent state and gave birth to the first black-led republic. Death, torture, and the fact that the slaves, our people work land that was stolen from them, yet which they do not own. Today in South Africa, farmers torture and murder their workers. The struggle of black people and the oppressed of the world continues today. In South Africa and across the world, but we draw inspiration from the Haitian Revolution and recognize that while their generational mission was the defeat of slavery and colonialism, ours in economic freedom in our lifetime and the return of our land. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there no objections to the motion? No objections, agreed to. ANC?
Thank you, House Chair. The African National Congress moves without
Sorry,
notice.
Chair, we had indicated in circulation that we had objected to that one.
What is it, Honorable Steenhuisen?
When it was circulated, we indicated objection to it, and the rules say that if there's 5 of us, 5 parties have to agree, and including the majority and largest
But
minority.
Honorable Steenhuisen, I asked the question and then you kept quiet. You kept quiet. Okay, I hear you. Continue. Who's on the podium?
Chair.
No.
I would just like to know, are you registering the objection or are you going to let it go through?
The thing is,
Because it's after the
when
fact.
I put question, there was no objection.
Okay, thanks very much.
And I will stick to that. Continue.
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House knows that Mali's President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita has won another term in a runoff elections with more than 67% of the vote on Sunday, 12 August 2018, understands that the government stepped up security for Sunday's runoff, deploying 6,000 troops in addition to the 30,000 who already were on duty. Acknowledges that the earlier round of voting was marred by armed attacks blamed on jihadists, including some linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, and ethnic violence that led to the closing of several hundred voting places. Understands that despite the complaints from the opposition rival Sise and his supporters, the diplomats have called for calm and respect for the election results. And in conclusion, congratulates President Keita on his election for a second 5-year term. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections to the motion? Thank you. No objections, agreed to. IFP?
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party that this House notes that on the 1st of August 2018, thousands of women took to the streets to demand urgent action to stop gender-based violence, which has reached unprecedented levels, causing untold harm to many women. Further notes that women who formed part of the total shutdown movement handed over a memorandum to President Ramaphosa with a set of list of demands to the state. Acknowledges that an integrative plan of action drawing together all relevant sectors of our society and all government departments as well as political will is urgently needed to successfully end this crisis. Accepts and supports the list of 24 demands as presented by the protesters and demanding that the state do all in its power to protect women and children from all forms of violence. Applauds the organizers of the total shutdown movement and all the women who rose in their numbers, adding their voices to this fight, and all those who continue to do everything in their power to bring an end to femicide, rape, and gender-based violence. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. NFP?
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of the NFP without notice that this House notes the ruthless killing of 4 members of Dube family that were stabbed to death over the weekend in Marani Hill, KwaZulu-Natal. Further note that Mr. Joseph Makatini who is a brother to Mrs. Thembi Dube, who was also stabbed to death, mentioned that the community of Tonwood in Marani Hill was traumatized as a result of this ruthless killing. Understand that the suspect, Mr. Kwelegani Dube, might have stabbed and later hanged himself after stabbing the other 3 members of the family, including 2-year-old child. Send its condolences to the members of the family and relatives and call upon the police to leave no stone unturned in investigating this matter so that even the traumatized community of Tonwood in Marani Hill can know the truth and find peace on the matter. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? None. ANC, yes.
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes with shock the deadly earthquake stated the Indonesian 9th of 2008. Understands that the quakes have left hospitals, hikers have been rescued from a volcano following this deadly earthquake start. We acknowledge that rescuers were finding some remote areas hard to reach because bridges and roads have been destroyed by the earthquake. We understand that Indonesia is prone to earthquakes as it is situated in a ring of fire, an area in the basin of Pacific Ocean where many tremors and the African National Congress expresses its condolences to the government and the people of Indonesia.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. UDM? FF?
To your left, ma'am.
Was so quick to say, to call the next party. You go on.
Thank you, Chair. I move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House, 1, outright rejects the false claims by the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, that South Africa and its government is involved in the seizure of land and farms and the large-scale farming killing of white South Africans. 2, further rejects this claim as it undermines the current national land expropriation without compensation debate that is currently undergoing a parliamentary process through public hearings in consultation with all people of South Africa. Notes this unwarranted act borders on undermining South Africa's sovereignty, encourages the President of South Africa to invite the United States President to visit South Africa as his host and at his cost, in order for him to understand how this democratic process of land expropriation without compensation is being conducted, and understand the proper workings of a progressive democracy, condemns all uninformed and irredeemable racist individual statements that incite panic and fear to external and internal audiences. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Filtani. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. FF plus. Latek maar zeker maak. LS nie weer nie. DA.
Thank you, ma'am. To your left here. Thank you. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House congratulates Stellenbosch University on marking its centenary this year. Notes that since its formation out of Victoria College on the 2nd of April 2018 through an Act of Parliament, Stellenbosch University has become a leading higher education institution that is making a crucial contribution to our human development in our country, on our continent, and in the rest of the world. Further notes that in a recent statement, despite celebrating the many successes and achievements of the university over the past 100 years, the university acknowledged its contribution towards the injustices of the past, for which it has expressed deep regret, and has taken responsibility towards present and future generations by committing itself unconditionally to the ideal of an inclusive, world-class university in and for Africa. Acknowledges that in the most recent academic year, Stellenbosch University awarded a record number of qualifications for the third time in a row, amounting to 9,032 in total, including 1,620 master's degrees and 305 PhD degrees, of which 43 and 41% respectively went to colored, black and Indian students. Recognizes the university's contribution as a national asset and its resolute steady progress in terms of promoting multilingualism, broadening access, increasing its social impact and advancing transformation, and applauds this leading South African university in its centenary year. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? Objections. Agreed to EFF? Okay, thank you. I pass. ANC?
Chair, on behalf of the ANC, I move that this House notes with sadness the death of 4 adults and a child following a bus crash on the road between Melmoth and Mpangeni in KwaZulu-Natal on Saturday, the 11th August 2018. Further noting that the 6 victims succumbed to injuries at Ngwelezane Hospital the following day. Understands that the 33 injured were treated on the scene and a number of them taken to hospital via private vehicles before the paramedics arrived at the scene. Further understand that the bus carried 60 passengers and on its way from Johannesburg to Mpangeni when it overturned. Believes that the passengers were members of the 12th Apostolic Church in Christ who were traveling to Mpangeni for the church's 40th anniversary celebrations. Calls upon the police to speed up the investigations into this horrific bus crash to establish the cause of the crash, and lastly conveys its heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, and relatives of the 6 people who died. I so move, Chair.
Thank you. Are there no objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. Cope? Yadlul. ACGP? Yadlula. ANC?
Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the ANC that the House notes with sadness the death of at least 24 school children on their way to school when their boat sank in the northern Sudan on Wednesday, 15 August 2018. Further notes that more than 40 children were on the boat whose engine failed in a strong current as it crossed a 2.5-kilometer flooded area near the River Nile. Believes that wooden boats, locally known as marakip, are still favored in Sudan, with islanders and fishermen heavily dependent on these traditional boats to transport passengers, their goods and personal belongings across the river. Acknowledges that the peoples who were between the ages of 7 and 16 usually go to school on foot, but have been using a boat for the past week due to the flooding after heavy rains. Recalls that the telephone network was down due to the rains, making it difficult for the headmaster to report the accident. And the ANC conveys its condolences to the government of Sudan and the families of the deceased. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? None. The motion is agreed to. AIC? Ahang SA? ANC? ANC?
Here I am. The ANC moves without notice that the House knows that the Professor Louisa Noka has been appointed Vice President to the Executive Board of the International Mathematical Union. Further notes that this appointment to the International Mathematical Union Board during the organization's general meeting held in Brazil earlier this month makes him the first African mathematician to reach those heights. Also notes that since its inception in 1922, the International Mathematical Union has never had an African representative on its board. Recalls that Professor Notka became the first black Rhodes Scholar to graduate from Oxford University with a doctorate in philosophy, mathematics in 1982. Further recalls that he has also become the first black vice-chancellor of Wits University in 2003, and during his 10-year tenure, he became the founding director of the Center for Mathematical and Computational Science at the university. Understands that the mission of the International Mathematical Union is to create global cooperation in mathematics. Supports his dream of developing mathematical programs that are geared towards alleviating the shortage crisis of science, technology, engineering, and math students, especially black female representatives, as well as teachers. Further supports his interest of focusing and influencing the role of International Mathematical Union on the African continent and that of raising the profile of African mathematics, and wishes him much success in his new position of responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. Tatana Godi, APC.
The Council House Chairperson. The African People's Convention moves that the House, one, notes with sadness the passing away on the 15th August 2018 of Mama Zondeni Veronica Sobukwe at the age of 91 years. Salute her as an exemplary mother, partner, and leader. Honor her determination and steadfastness throughout the trials and tribulation of her life as a nurse during the liberation struggle till her last day on earth. Recognizing that she aptly represents those in the liberation struggle who served, suffered, and sacrificed without being seen giving rousing speeches in rallies, leading defiant marches, but who bore the pain and anxiety of having to keep families together on their own, feeling the pain of their loved ones in detention, underground, or in exile. Recognizing further that she was not just Robert Sobukwe's wife, she had a life of her own, and she is honored for who she was, dignity personified, with a calm, iron determination on the right of the African indigents to national self-determination. Wishes the preparations and funeral itself to be as dignified as she has led a life. Thanking the President, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, for according her a special state funeral, Category 2, and flying the national flag at half-mast in her honor. Finally, passes its heartfelt condolences and solidarity.
No objections agreed to. Pan-Africanist Congress. DA.
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House congratulates KwaZulu Montjani, who became the first black South African woman to play at Wimbledon. Notes that KwaZulu was born in Limpopo 32 years ago, suffered from amniotic band syndrome, which prevented some fingers and her legs from developing properly, and she had her left leg amputated at the age of 12. Further notes that KG is South Africa's #1 wheelchair tennis player since 2005. Further notes that she was named South Africa's Disabled Sportswoman of the Year in 2005, 2011, and in 2015. Also notes that she holds 29 single titles and has participated in the Australian Open, the French Open, the US Open, won the Swiss Open 4 times, and now in Wimbledon she played. Recognizes that KG was also a member of the South African team at the Summer Paralympics several times and represented South Africa in the World Team Cup. Also notes that due to a lack of sponsorship, KG this year traveled to London alone without a coach, and despite this, made it to the semi-finals in the world's best-known tennis tournament, and her world rank is now 6th. We share in KG's joy and receiving private sponsorship since yesterday, which allows her to participate in the upcoming US Open and beyond. We applaud KwaZulu on her achievements, for her positive attitude, and for being proudly South African. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? None agreed to. ANC.
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House note with great sadness the passing on of one of our South African renowned and outstanding actors and playwright Winston Shona on the 2nd of August 2018. Further notes that Mr. Shona was a stalwart of protest theatre who captivated audiences globally and earned a prestigious Tony Award for Best Actor from the American Theatre Wing and Broadway League in recognition of his exceptional performances in the political dramas Sizwe Bantu is Dead and The Island. Recalls that in 2010 he received the National Order of Ikamanga in silver for his excellent contribution to theatre and the art scene in South Africa. Acknowledges that Mr. Shona's gift in performance art were widely appreciated when he collaborated with his peers, highly celebrated John Carney and Athol Fagat. Believes that Mr. Shona will be remembered for his immeasurable contributions to the creative industry and performance art in particular, which he leveraged as a platform of resistance against apartheid. Further believes that his work will continue through those he helped and shaped by installing social consciousness through arts and culture, and conveys its sincere condolences to the Shona family, a friend, colleague, and a comrade. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there no objections to the motion? No objections agreed to. That concludes motions without notice. The next item on the order paper, honorable members, is member statements. ANC, anyone who would like to make a statement?
Yes, House Chairperson. Thanks. Monday, the 20th August 2018, was the 35th anniversary of the United Democratic Front. In the same year that the country celebrates the centenary of the UDF's co-president, Mam Albertina Nontsikelelo Sisulu. As the ANC, we pay tribute to the leaders of UDF, some of whom were imprisoned, banned, and paid the ultimate price. It was 35 years ago, on 20th August 1983, when thousands of South Africans, black and white, from all walks of life, came together to form the UDF in Rocklands, Mitchell's Plain, inspired by the Freedom Charter and united in their opposition against the racist tricameral parliament that sought to divide the people of South Africa. This formidable united front was determined to change the political trajectory of our country. The UDF moved swiftly to make apartheid unworkable and contributed towards pushing the regime to release Comrade Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners. Later, the leaders of the
DA?
In 2014, the 5-year Akko Kumapi died after he fell into a pit latrine at Mhlodumela Primary School in Limpopo. A promise by the ANC government was announced publicly for hundreds of proper toilets by the end of that financial year. On 14 August this year, the Sanitation Appropriate for Education, SAFE initiative was launched by President Ramaphosa and the Minister of Basic Education, which we welcome. Yet, the funds Limpopo Department budgeted for sanitation in this financial year are totally insufficient to address this crisis and shows no understanding of the crisis nor any commitment. The MEC should admit that the 115 million rand budgeted for the period 2018-19 on water and sanitation for 79 schools is less than half a drop in the ocean, considering the huge infrastructure backlog caused by maladministration. According to the APP, more than 2,000 schools have inappropriate sanitation facilities. 2, 857 schools still have pit toilets, and 5 schools still have no access to any sanitation facility. This amounts to 55% of the schools in Limpopo, which affects over 900,000 learners. In the last 2 financial years, the Limpopo Department of Education has run up 2 billion rand in irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The message is clear. The ANC is stealing and our children are suffering.
EFF.
Thank you, Chair. We are prepared to confront all racists head-on everywhere where racism rears its ugly head. Whether at racist H&M, racist Mark and Bean in Somerset West, or whether this boy called Adam something who recorded a video on a beach was happy that there were no black people on the beach and referred to us as the K-word. Because the ANC has allowed white people to continue to exploit black people, enjoy privilege, and treat black people as lesser beings. Besides, the ANC has allowed white people to continue to enjoy and control the strategic sectors of the economy at the expense of black people. That is why white racists, even amongst ourselves here, are not afraid to display such bigotry, hate, and superiority. And they do so because they still have the land. White people assaulted their workers, domestic workers, and raped behind high walls by the white employers.
Honorable
House Chairperson, I refer you to a plethora of rulings that have been made in this House on numerous occasions around racial stereotyping. Describe the acts that the individual is describing to all white people is racial stereotyping of its worst kind, and this House cannot tolerate that. I would ask that section of the member's statement is ruled unparliamentary.
Maybe I missed that, but I will look into that and come back to the House with a report. You have 7 seconds left. Can you please complete?
Thanks, Chair.
Honorable person, what's your...
House Chair, we are not referring to all whites. We said racist whites.
Okay,
so, I mean,
Honorable person, I made a ruling on the issue. I'm not going to entertain the latter part. Continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Sitike. The black children are subjected to racism at schools. All this will continue as long as whites control the economy, and the only way we will ever end racism is by taking back the land.
Thank you. Honorable member.
Honorable Chair, the honorable member was holding the ANC accountable for racism, really. The ANC
Honorable member, that has passed. Unfortunately, you came up too late. Can we continue? ANC.
Thank you, Chair. The ANC government is committed to improving the quality of education, eliminating disparities, and thus hails the unveiling of 2 computer centers, 2 libraries at the Moscow Primary School and Jongintaba Secondary School in Unu, in the Eastern Cape, on Friday, the 17th August. This unveiling is in honor of our former President Nelson Mandela, who valued education above all else. The new facilities were provided in partnership with the state-owned entity, ESCOM. The partnership has renovated the libraries and donated 42 computers to 2 schools, respectively. The unveiling of the computer center and library will hopefully promote the love for education and a reading culture of the children in the community of Unu. This will also assist in improving the learning experiences of learners and teaching experiences of educators through improved facilities. Thus, ANC also believes that the new facilities will assist in promoting good
Nako e
citizenship,
fedile, me.
preparing. So I thank you.
Thank you. IFP?
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. On the 16th of September 2016, the IFP urgently requested the South African Human Rights Commission to investigate and report on the infringement of human rights in terms of the ingestion of genetically modified food and the associated environmental and human health risks involved in the production and use thereof. Despite the urgency, the HRC is yet to make a recommendation and a finding in this matter. However, Chair, to this day, our country still makes use of this herbicide, which contains glyphosate, more commonly known as Roundup, even though in 2015, the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans. The outcome of a landmark lawsuit in the United States recently has set an international precedent where the court found in favor of a plaintiff and stated that the herbicide manufactured by Monsanto, Roundup weed killer, caused his cancer and that the corporation failed to warn him of the health hazards from exposure. The jury found that Monsanto, to quote, acted with malice or oppression, close quote. Chairperson, our Constitution obligates us in Chapter 2, the Bill of Rights, as well as in NEMA, to proceed with caution when we are unsure of the effects of a substance upon both human and environmental health and well-being. Why are we allowing our people to continue to be used as science experiments by wealthy foreign multinationals who are only profit-driven? Stop using Roundup, stop using GMO maize, until we have conducted our own scientific research and are certain that these products are safe for human consumption and the environment. I thank you.
The NFP. Thank you, Chair. The 50th Parliament has witnessed a myriad of socio-economic challenges in our society. Chief among the ills that we have seen are the lack of service delivery to our people of South Africa, corruption, unemployment, poverty, gender-based violence. We have seen shortage of necessary skills for management and leadership positions in state departments, as well as municipalities. We have witnessed crime and violence ravaging our country. The focus of this member statement, Chair, is mainly on three ills that our country has been faced with. That is corruption that continues unabatedly, the lack of integrity, moral and ethical leadership, skills gap and skills shortage. At the moment, the judges on the Commission on State Capture is busy trying to expose the truth and collecting evidence on human deeds that did some injustices to the masses of our people. We know that corruption is real and it's a time we must deal with it. Those that are found to have been enriching themselves through State Department resources and SOEs must be dealt with. They must face consequences. The law must take its course. It cannot be that at the end of each financial year, the Auditor General reports that at least nothing less than 40 billion got disappearing through irregular or wasteful expenditure, fraud or corruption, and there are no consequences management. We now find comfort in
Honourable
knowing
Member, your time is now expired.
Oh, thank
the
you.
ANC. The ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, we know what triggered President Trump's ill-considered and most unfortunate tweet on the unfolding land reform debate in our country. His tweet contains 3 false statements based on AfriForum's smear campaign against the South African government. AfriForum was initially established to protect the constitutional rights of communities, minority communities. But CEO Kali Kriel and his deputy Ernst Roots steadily hijacked the movement. The pair is currently abusing the membership fees of unsuspecting members to fund their international trips to harm the very people they purport to represent. They are spreading lies that white people in South Africa are under attack by the South African government, that white farmers are being singled out for systematic violence, and their recent Washington trip was no exception. They scandalously distorted the land debate in an attempt to cut off international aid to South Africa. Speaker, it's time for South Africans, in particular AfriForum members and Afrikaans speakers, to realize that AfriForum is nothing but a radical right-wing movement. The majority of progressive Afrikaans speakers support the President's land reform objective. We heard that yesterday. Further, political parties who base their election campaigns on the back of these scare tactics should realize that they too are undermining South Africa.
Go.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Congress of the People was founded in defense of our Constitution. As such, COPE firmly believes that the injustices and divisions of our past must be addressed, and within the framework set out and provided for in our Constitution, and in a peaceful and stable national atmosphere. We believe that the Constitution in its current form provides all the powers required to ensure the full realization of just and equitable land reform and security of tenure. But Pandora's box has been opened, and the proverbial 1,000 ills has been released upon our nation, including increasing racial tension and the destruction of our national cohesion, and decreasing investment and increasing economic stagnation. Now the United States of America has entered the fray, and AGOA, which facilitates trade and investment with the United States and currently provides us with a trade surplus, is being threatened. Further, we note the growing weakening and devaluation of the rand, which represents growing international concerns about the direction and future prospects of our country. We call on the President, the ANC and other supporters of the expropriation of land without compensation to reconsider their position and to put the interest of South Africa first. Likewise, we call upon those that are propagating undue fear amongst our communities and minority groups to desist from doing so. Now is the time for the majority of responsible, like-minded and patriotic citizens to galvanize together and to take ownership of our constitutional order.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chair. The African National Congress is pleased with the life sentence handed down to the 45-year-old Martin Visser for the murder of a farm worker in Vredendal on the West Coast. Even a failed suicide attempt by Visser in the courtroom cell did not stop the High Court from sentencing him. The Lutzville farmer was found guilty of Peters's 2015 murder after he assaulted him with a spade, dragging him with a quad bike, mutilated his genitals and perineum, and burying him behind his father's vineyard in 2015. Visser had pleaded not guilty to charges of murder, assault with intent to inflict grievous bodily harm, and 4 charges of common assault of 3 other people. The ANC believes that no individual should suffer the way that Mr. Peterson did. Our heart goes out to his family who had a loved one taken away so viciously. We welcome this judgment in the hope that more farm murderers will also be brought to book by our criminal justice system. This ruling is a massive win for farm workers' rights, and it paves the way for workers' dignity to be restored. Far too long, farm workers have been treated as second-class citizens of this land. The time for change is now, and all spheres of government need to work together to achieve it. I thank you.
The DA.
Honourable Chair, the ANC-run Mfuleni municipality, which serves Sharpeville, Van der Bijlpark and Sebokeng, faces imminent collapse. Eskom and Rand Water is owed nearly 1 billion rand. Payment agreements have been reneged upon. Undertakings to pay have repeatedly been broken. Fire engines, traffic department vehicles, and refuse removal vehicles are in the process of being repossessed. The Gauteng government has, in terms of Section 139 of the Constitution, placed Mfuleni under administration. The task team, led by the Gauteng Premier, to rescue Mfuleni has done nothing to resolve this crisis. Municipal services are at a virtual standstill. Sewage pumps are not functioning. Sewage is being directly diverted into the Vaal River. Fish are dying. Communities downstream are receiving sewage water. Unserviced electrical substations are frequently on fire, causing blackouts. Many areas are without water due to Rand Water reducing water pressure. An infestation of rats has erupted due to uncollected refuse, with massive potholes causing a threat to life and property. Whilst ANC politicians are blaming Mfuleni residents, Eskom and Rand Water, the situation has deteriorated with no rescue action in sight. The Municipal Recovery Plan from National Treasury, intended to save the Vaal region from the most incapable ANC misrule, is urgently awaited. It is time for a new government. Yes, in Mfuleni, Gauteng, and South Africa. I thank you.
The EFF.
Thank you, Chair. South Africans of Indian descent who treat our African brothers and sisters as lesser human beings, especially in KZN, must know that we will never apologize for calling out Indian racism. But this must never be mistaken as anti-Indian, because we are in an organization that is the champion, that champions the cause of the oppressed and dispossessed of the world. We are willing to assist anybody who needs our help, and that is why we assisted Mr. Hussain and his family from India. Mr. Hussain and his family had been waiting for naturalization certificates from the Department of Home Affairs for over a year. And because the department did not hand over their certificates, they wisely came to the EFF for help. We were happy to do so as we help many people on a daily basis, and because of our persistence, letters and questions to the Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Hussain and his family finally received their naturalization certificates. All sober-minded people must not be blinded by their bigotry and know that the EFF is an organization for the people, willing to help all those who have been wronged, regardless of what you term as race. Thank you very much.
The ANC. Order, honourable members.
Thanks, Chair. More blacks who benefit from fishing industry.
Order, honourable members.
We commend the Department of Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries on its commitment to open up many opportunities for more blacks to benefit from fishing industry quotas. This industry has been dominated by white and foreign companies for many years. Maximizing interest for these previously disadvantaged people and communities to the fishing business is part of deepening diversity and economic transformation. We support the department's effort of allocation of fishing rights to the previously disadvantaged section of our society. A lot of work needs to be completed to open up more access through quotas so that the playing field are level for entrance. Ocean economy carries massive opportunities for this country. It has the potential to unlock great number of employment opportunities while facilitating many downstream and upstream business opportunities. I thank you.
Agang.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Agang SA would like to take this opportunity to remind Donald Trump and the USA that South Africa is an independent nation. We will not surrender the freedom of our nation to this sick man of the 21st century. Land expropriation without compensation is not a begging mission, but an effort to correct the wrongs of the past. We need an apology from this natural-born racist called Donald Trump from undermining this nation. AfriForum must know they are doing harm to this country the same as the Guptas did. I don't know why AfriForum hates black people so much. They are willing to spend millions to stop equitable share of land to all citizens. No one will stop expropriation of land without compensation. We cannot continue to have a fake democracy where the majority are landless and poor. The time has come to fully emancipate our people. No amount of racism and arrogance will stop us. I thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chair. The African National Congress welcomed the arrest of 13 people for a range of illegal wildlife trade charges as part of South Africa's contribution to the global Operation Thunderstorm. 4 live sharks, 700 kg of abalone, ivory, and rhino horns were found during the operation. The Interpol Wildlife Crimes Working Group had, during its meeting in Singapore in 2017, discussed the global operation against illegal trade in wildlife and timber. This operation, called Thunderstorm, has targeted the people and networks behind cross-border wildlife crime. During the global operation, Interpol announced that 1,974 cases were recorded and 400 people arrested during investigation and research in 92 countries during the month of May. In South Africa, the SAPS, Hawks, SARS, customers, the Green Scorpions, Sandparks, and the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Forestry law enforcement officer participate in the operation. ANC commends the law enforced for the operation. I thank you.
The DA.
The ANC is at war with itself and the people are suffering. Factional battles within the Eastern Cape ANC are hamstringing municipalities they govern. At Nguza Hill municipality in the Eastern Cape, the ANC's factional battles have taken center stage during council meetings over the last 3 months. Factionalism in council saw the Speaker's faction unlawfully place the municipal manager on special leave for 2 months, a decision which cost the municipality 346,905 rand 51 cents in legal fees. These funds could have been used to build better temporary homes for the residents at New Rest, Lusiki Siki, which the court ordered the Nguza Hill mayor to do after illegally demolishing homes. As if this was not bad enough, at 2 council meetings held in July, different factions in the ANC caucus held chairs and fists at each other, causing mayhem in council. Factionalism is destroying the ANC from within, and we will not stand by and watch as our local government structures crumble because of their failures. The ANC should be reminded that their voter base at the recent by-election at Nguza Hill municipality dropped by 20%, while the DA grew by 20%. This clearly shows that the residents of Nguza Hill municipality is eager for change to have better service delivery tonight to them.
Member, your time is expired.
Honorable Chairperson.
Yes, Honourable Member.
No, I was wondering if the member is not mistaken for the DA, the Jilile, and
No, that's not a
everybody.
point of order. The ANC. Order, Honourable Members.
Thanks, Chairperson. The ANC condemns in the strongest terms the acts of mob justice and vigilance that took place in Davidton. It is reported that a mob attack and burned Sianda Mcholi with a tire after being accused of being part of 5 men responsible for street and house robberies, as well as being involved in gang-related activity in the area in Davidton. It is of concern that the police confirm that there is no record of complaints or previous cases opened against the 2 victims. 2 men were arrested for the death of one of 2 victims killed in a series of attacks this week. The police are still searching for more suspects who could be linked to the attempted murder of a teen who was brutally attacked by the crowd, as well as for the second murder. Whilst the ANC encourage community to mobilize themselves and participate in action to improve combating crime by establishing street committees and community courts, we however persuade the South African law-abiding citizens not to take law into their hands. They should instead work with law enforcement agencies in reporting acts of crime and sharing of information that may lead to the conviction of the criminals to the police. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Members, that concludes member statements. Are there any ministerial responses? Are there any ministerial responses? The Honourable Deputy Minister of Home Affairs and the Honourable Deputy Minister Skwatsha. In that order, please.
Vice Chair, on the issue of the learning facilities at UNO, it is indeed heartwarming to learn and to see how many South Africans, under the auspices of the Good Citizenship Campaign, are putting their resources, their best efforts at the disposal of their country in many, many schools around the country. This is certainly patriotism at its finest. I want to refer that member to the commentary in the Star today in the editorial page from a young lady called Siwapiwe Miataza. In paying tribute to Kofi Annan, after hearing him talk as a young child about his love for Africa, she has pioneered a program to eradicate pit latrines in certain rural schools. And she says, and I think these are her words that should inspire us all. She says, Kofi Annan inspired me not just to watch and do nothing, but to get involved in bringing change. I do think these are words that many of us in this house can self-introspect about. I just want to also add that on Friday last week, Minister Gikaba handed naturalization certificates to over 500 people in a solemnization ceremony in KwaZulu-Natal, and not just the couple that was referred to by the Honourable Member from the EFF. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Deputy Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform.
Thank you. The life sentence meted against this farmer illustrates that the South African government and the justice system in particular will leave no stone unturned in its pursuit for a fair and equal society. But it also indicates that on the part of the department, we should strengthen our resolve to make sure that the extension of Security of Tenure Act is strengthened and closing all gaps. Strikingly, on this matter of this farmer, as government, we note the deafening silence of the AfriForum and President Donald Trump in particular. As government, we say life is sacrosanct, whether that is the life of the farmer or the farm workers. No one deserves to be killed. But this is also a clear illustration that we should move with speed in the course of expropriating land without compensation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. The Honourable Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation.
Honourable Chairperson, I want to respond to the Honourable Killian, the Honourable van Schalkwyk, and the Honourable Member from Achang. And I'd like to begin by quoting from the State Department's statement that was issued yesterday. It goes as follows, and I quote, "We are aware of these reports and have been following this issue very closely for some time. South Africa is a strong democracy with resilient institutions, including a free press and an independent judiciary. South Africans are grappling with the difficult issue of land reform through an open process, including public hearings, broad-based consultations, and active civil society engagement. President Ramaphosa has pledged that the land reform process will follow the rule of law and its implementation will not adversely affect economic growth, agricultural production, or food security," close quote. Now, Chairperson, Tucker Carlson, who raised this matter on Fox News, is a confirmed racist and bigot. Indeed, Tucker Carlson's commitment to white supremacy would make Eugene Terreblanche, were he alive today, green with envy. Significantly, as has been pointed out by the Honourable van Schalkwyk and the Honourable Deputy Minister Skwatsha, AfriForum have made absolutely no reference to black and coloured farm workers in South Africa who have been murdered, raped, seriously assaulted, evicted from the land on which their ancestors' grave can be found. AfriForum's approach to this critical matter is in stark contrast to that of Agri-SA, the State Department of the US, whose statement is an accurate comment on the situation in South Africa, is most welcomed because it is mature, measured, and responsible. Thank you.
Are there any further ministerial responses? No, you had an opportunity, Honourable Deputy Minister. You can't have a second response. That concludes ministerial responses. The last item on the order paper is notices of motion. Does any member of the ANC wish to give a notice of motion?
Thank you, Chairperson. I move that the House in its next sitting debates the implementation and strengthening measures at improving safety for women at higher learning institutions. I so move.
The
Thank you.
DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the DA, at the next sitting of this House, I shall move that this House debates the worst quarterly contraction in GDP since 2009, and how tourism may be overhauled to assist arresting this worst economic setback in 9 years. Thank you.
The EFF.
I hereby rise on behalf of the EFF and move that the House in its next sitting debate the continuing struggle of fishing communities in its quest for an equitable stake in the ocean's economy. Thank
The
you.
ANC.
House Chairperson, I hereby move that in its next sitting, the House debate the expansion of the UN Security Council to ensure that all continents are represented and reflect the current global realities. I so move. Thank you.
The IFP.
Ngiyathokoza Sihlalo. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I shall move the decision of the House that the House debates the health risks involved with the continued use of herbicides which contain glyphosate and the adverse effects of the consumption of GMOs. I thank you.
The NFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. In the next sitting of this House, I shall move on behalf of the NFP that this House debates a high rate of sexual offenses at our tertiary institutions. I so move.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the impact of retrenchments in both the private and public sector. I so move.
The UDM.
This one is urgent. I hereby move on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House at this next sitting debates whether rural land should be owned by traditional leaders or private individuals. I so move.
The Freedom Front Plus. DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House debates the illegal deposits made by municipalities at VBS Mutual Bank, the state of investigations into this matter, the role of various ANC leaders in facilitating this illegal action, and the complete lack of disciplinary or criminal action against the perpetrators at municipalities and in the private sector.
EFF.
By the public and private sector and the effect thereof on economic growth. I so move.
COPE. The ACDP. The ANC.
Thanks, Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that the House on its next sitting debates the improvement of access to quality health service in urban and rural communities. I thank you.
The AIC. Agang. The ANC.
Thanks, Chair. On behalf of the ANC, on the next sitting, the promoting good governance, democracy, human rights, justice, and rule of law on the African continent. Thanks, Chair.
The APC. The PAC. The DA.
On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, at the next sitting of this House, I shall move that this House debate the technological and social media influence on elections.
The ANC. The ANC. There's no further motions. Honourable members, that concludes notices of motion and the business for the day. The House is adjourned.